I am joined by Susan Bassett, the Director of Intercollegiate Athletics and Recreational Sports at Ithaca College. Susan, how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Michael. Thanks for having me on and doing great, enjoying the nice hot summer weather, but it's been a busy time planning for what we can do to bring our athletes back, as you know.
I'm sure it is. The big news that happened last week was Ithaca College canceled all their fall sports. What went into that? Maybe what was the final factor that caused the sports to end up being canceled for the fall?
So let me clarify, and this is really important. We have suspended fall sport competition, but we will still fully engage with our fall sport teams with practices and training, and the same with winter and spring sports. So we have been working really intensively since May to take the guidance from the NCAA, the CDC, our local health department, Reopening America, and all of the information that is current from the scientific community on the safe return to sport. And our team physician, Dr. Andy Getson, and our head athletic trainer, Mike Matheny, have been doing really an enormous amount of work to take all of those various pieces of information and guidelines and synthesize it into a working framework for us to be able to re-engage in athletics safely. So we really feel strongly that we're able to participate in training and practices internally. What drove the decision to suspend fall sport competition is the challenge of traveling to other schools or bringing other schools to our campus when we know there's going to be restrictions on travel and bringing people to campus. So it came as a consensus decision with the Liberty League, which is our playing partner, our primary affiliation. And as you were watching, as we all watched the Division III national landscape, conference after conference was announcing the cancellation of fall sport competition. Some say suspend, some say postpone to the spring. We are choosing the word suspend. I don't anticipate that that is suddenly going to change on October 1st, but our attitude and what the college has pursued has been a phased approach with the best available information and going step by step. So honestly, as we looked at the national landscape and we reconciled the ability to bring people to campus or travel against the restrictions that every one of our students will face when they return to campus, we just felt like athletics competition for the fall sports was really not advisable, irresponsible at this point. So they are officially suspended.
You mentioned how some schools are framing this as a possible postponement till the spring. So, is there a possibility that these fall sports, like football, like soccer, like any sport, will have competition in the winter season or the spring season?
Yes, so there has been a lot of discussion, and we believe that we're going to hear something from the NCAA soon that might provide a framework to engage in spring sport competition, or I'm sorry, bring the fall sports to the spring. We are going to keep our options open and monitor that. I have to be honest, I think it will be difficult for us because of the density on our campus with the shared facilities and unfortunately our inclement weather to try to engage in all of our outdoor fall sports in the spring. But I would never say never. I could never have imagined that we'd be in the situation that we're in right now. And I think we owe it to our students and ourselves to just monitor and keep options open and make the best possible decision as circumstances evolve.
You also mentioned how teams will still be doing training and practices. Now, will that be exactly the same, or is it going to go to a more virtual approach or different in terms of players allowed so that they can be socially distant?
Right. It will definitely be very different than anything we have done. We will wear masks except during the actual act of the training. So we'll be socially distanced and in very small groups. Most of what we're going to do will be outside where there's a reduction in the transmission of the disease. So we're modifying all of our approaches and protocols. It will be very different moving forward.
I know that some professional athletes have used masks where it doesn't affect their ability to breathe at all while participating in athletic activity. Is there a possibility that Ithaca will be able to get those types of masks in the future for athletic competition?
We will certainly try. And honestly, everything has changed so quickly. It is evolving from even the testing. And one of the big components of what we will do is daily symptom checks. So student athletes will have to complete a kind of a questionnaire on an app on their phone every day before they're allowed to participate, describing their symptoms or lack of symptoms. And we're also going to have to come up with a process for contact tracing so we know who everybody has been with. But upon return, every Ithaca College employee and student will be tested for COVID. And if you test negative, you will then be able to move into what we're calling phase 2 of a re-engagement of athletics, which will be a very gradual resocialization process.
Now, how does this all affect club sports like rugby, which Ithaca is very good at, as well as intramural sports?
We do expect to engage our programming for club sports and intramurals. We had a club sport meeting with participants on Thursday night. We had about 75 students participate in the meeting, and we shared with them that our path forward will be similar as that of intercollegiate athletics, where there will be no external competition, but we will be working hard to help them through a phased resocialization plan so that they can engage in their activities as well. The men's rugby coach, Anne-Marie Farrell, has shared with us that they're planning a no contact rugby approach. So they're modifying their playing and practice rules. And so we will implement that for those sports. So it's going to be a great deal of detail work and case by case. Every sport is a little bit different, but our focus and our priority is to determine a path forward for engagement in all of our physical activities, whether it be fitness, instructional programs, recreational programs, club sports, and intramurals. We're hoping to have a wide range of opportunities for our students to engage in when they return to campus.
Now, the Liberty League, they canceled all competition and championships through December 31st. However, the winter season usually does start in around November, mid to late November. So if Ithaca is in a pretty good situation in terms of handling this, and it's not a lot of cases in Tompkins County, is it possible that winter sports will have competitions, but just not in conference?
Yes, that was articulated that way by design to allow each school the autonomy to arrange for non-conference competition if the situation would allow it, or each school would allow it. As you know, we are going to return to remote instruction at Thanksgiving. So whether or not we would compete in November or December in our winter sports remains an open question.
Now, if there is competition, will athletes be allowed to remain on campus, or is Ithaca just going to kick everyone out no matter what?
Well, so I don't know the answer to that question, and I'm sure that if there's a way for us to do it safely, the college generally has been very supportive of athletics. So we will have to see. And again, we're making our best judgments at each juncture to be able to do as much as we can possibly do, as long as it's safe and mitigates risk for our students, staff, and faculty in the campus community.
When is the decision on how winter sports are going to proceed be made by either by Ithaca or the Liberty League? And I guess what factors or benchmarks are going to go into that decision?
It will be similar to what we did in the fall sports. I am not going to rush a decision on this. As you know, we were one of the last conferences to make this announcement. The Empire 8 announced sooner, and so did the SUNYAC conference. We don't feel that there's any reason to rush this decision. And so I would assume that it will be, probably not before September or possibly early September. But it's easier to get to know than yes. So I'd rather wait and see if we can figure out a way to engage safely for those winter sports.
Now, the spring athletes, they had their seasons cut short, and I believe they got an extra season of eligibility due to it. Now, is that also going to happen with the fall athletes? Are they going to also get that extra year of eligibility? And if so, how are they going to do that, especially people who are planning to graduate in the spring?
So we're really waiting for the NCAA to come out. If they decide to cancel fall championships, it may be that people will get a season of eligibility restored. But in the spring sport case, keep in mind that they had already started competition. In some cases had 2 or 3 games already. That's quite different than canceling a season or suspending competition before you even get started. So our fall sports student athletes have not used and will not use a season of eligibility. So there's really nothing to give back to them.
Now, if an athlete takes a leave of absence in the fall due to no competition, maybe they just don't want to sacrifice that, especially if they will graduate in the spring, or if they're in one of those states where they can't travel to Ithaca College because the fact that there is a lack of facilities to use for that, are they going to be able to participate in team activities, or are they considered basically off the team during that time?
So with the college policy of not inviting students back who have a permanent residence in one of the restricted states, they would not be allowed to come to Ithaca and then participate in athletics until they're cleared by the college to be on campus. So that would mean their state came off the restricted advisory list, or they had some, I really don't know any other avenue for them to return, but they will not be allowed to participate in athletics as long as they're from a banned state.
Now, if sports eventually do happen, which we kind of all hope it does in Ithaca College, are there going to be changes in media access as well as fan and player seating? And maybe how do you envision that?
Well, I would say that we were already going down the path of no spectators at our events if we were having fall sport competition. That was a Liberty League discussion, and it was highly likely that we would proceed without spectators at our competitions. I would expect that would be the case for the year. When you look at professional sports doing the same thing, it would be hard to argue that we could have spectators. And in terms of media, I guess we'll have to figure out what are considered essential personnel. I believe that we could have a limited number of media at our events to report and to broadcast, which I think would be really important given that we would be living in a virtual world. So I would tell you, Michael, that if there's a way for us to do that safely, we would be very interested in having our Ithaca College student media at our events.
Now, what is going to be done to sanitize facilities that athletes are still allowed to use in the fall?
So I don't anticipate that there's going to be a whole lot of indoor, quote unquote, free recreation. I think most of what we're going to be able to do will have to be supervised. I think outdoors will be a little different. So, for example, if we use one of the varsity weight rooms for team training, we're reducing that capacity to one half or less, and it will only be opened and supervised by Vic Brown or someone from his staff. I don't envision regular pickup basketball games or captain's practices that we would normally have early in the fall. Everything's going to have to be controlled and supervised and with a great deal of social distancing.
I'm assuming the answer is yes, but are coaches still going to be paid fully despite the fact that there is going to be less or no athletic competition for them this season?
Well, actually, yes, because in many ways we're busier with this scenario. Obviously, not preparing for competition and traveling to a game or hosting a game does reduce the burden on them, but they are a very important element of the retention of our student athletes and also the recruitment of our student athletes. So, Michael, if you can imagine, we're going to be working in small groups, and the academic day calendar, we expect to really make it difficult to get everyone together at the same time. So where you might have had a 4 or 4:30 p.m. traditional practice time, we may not be able to do that, or for safety reasons, want to get everyone together. So I actually think the coaches are going to end up having to conduct multiple sessions of their practices rather than just one a day. And so they will be busy. But keep in mind, they teach in our activity classes. They're very important for the counseling of student athletes and helping people to adjust to college life, both their first year students and others. And so they serve many functions and wear many hats, and I think those will be important. I also would anticipate that some of our time and talent will be assigned to the supervision of facilities to make sure that whatever's going on inside them is safe and appropriate. So that's what our thinking is at this point, and I'm hoping that that's the approach that we take.
Well, thank you. And I do hope there are going to be sports in Ithaca College in the future, and fingers crossed for all that. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Well, Michael, I'll tell you what I say to our students and staff. We will be back. There will be athletics, intercollegiate athletics again, and bomber sports again. We don't know exactly when, but when we are able to come back, we'll be ready to go, and we will represent the college in the fine way that everyone knows and expects.